All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dennis Schultz. I am the Executive Director for the Blacks in Technology Foundation. Thank you for attending this webinar. It's going to be on project management and service delivery, specifically ITIL 4 and PRINCE2 from AXELOS, which we are excited to have attending. If this is your first time attending a Blacks in Technology webinar, we will have this recorded and posted online for future viewing. But we encourage you to participate in the chat as well as the Q&A. And if you have any questions about what we do basically what you think we do. We advocate for the promotion and inclusion of Black people in technology. So I'll put a link in the chat. If you're not a member, feel free to check out our website and join. But this isn't about me, this is about you. So let me get to starting, and I'll introduce Jason Dion, who is the CEO of Dion Training, and our, I won't call you a guru, but you're definitely a training expert for our ITIL and PRINCE2. We actually have a formal agreement with Dion Training, so they are our official training partner for ITIL. So I'm excited about that. We have Aaron Smith. Aaron is our representative from AXELOS. Am I saying it right? AXELOS? I feel like I'm saying it wrong. Okay. And she'll talk to a couple of slides. And then there's Mike Evans. Mike is with PeopleCert, and I'll let each of these guys talk to their particular role and function, and we'll get started.
Hey, so my name is Jason Dion, and I'm going to be the one who's going to cover the majority of what you're going to hear tonight. So you're going to hear a lot of my voice. I'll try to keep it interesting. I'll try to keep it fun and make it relevant to the things you guys actually care about. Because sometimes people think ITIL or Prince or project management can be dull and boring, but honestly, it's actually a lot of fun when you get into it. So we'll talk about all that today. I look forward to working with you all. I'm going to pass over to Erin to let her introduce herself.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name's Aaron Smith. As Dennis mentioned, I work for AXELOS, and they author these certifications. So after Jason goes through the elements of these products, then I'll show you some labor data insights that will hopefully validate some of the reasons why you might want to consider these certifications. And thank you for having me.
And very quickly, my name is Mike Evans. I'm with PeopleCert. We call ourselves the glue. So we actually are sitting right in between Jason and Aaron when it comes to our operational role in the process. So we work with Jason as a partner of PeopleCert, and we work with AXELOS as the content providers, and we manage partners within the ecosystem to help deliver training.
All right, with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started. I wanted to thank you all for joining us today. I know it's the evening time where everybody is over in the US, so I hope you all are going to enjoy this. Gerald, Frank, Jarrett, Juliana, looks like Kimberly, Monique, Olivia, Oye, VJ, Vivian, and Wakema are all here. So here with us live, and then anybody else who's watching it on the replay later. So we're going to talk today about project management and service delivery. And specifically for the digital economy, because as we all know, we live and work in a digital economy these days. Everything is really service management related, as we're going to talk about. So I want to say welcome to everybody. I'm glad to have you here. And just another quick introduction of myself. My name is Jason Dion. I am the lead trainer at Dion Training. I have been doing this ITIL and project management stuff for about 20 to 25 years for organizations large and small. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go through today. My company is a certified training organization, accredited training organization through PeopleCert on behalf of AXELOS. And that's why all three of us are here. So normally the way this works is when you go to a training course, you're going to get somebody like me teaching you. And then we are checked and authorized through PeopleCert, who make sure we're doing it all the right way to make sure you're getting good quality training and examinations. And AXELOS actually writes the content behind all these books and these best practices. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So what I want to start out talking about is ITIL. And we're going to spend the first half of our talk together with ITIL, and then we're going to move into the project management side. Now, when we talk about ITIL, ITIL has been around for a long, long time. It started back in the 1980s, and it started as this thing called the Information Technology Infrastructure Library. And it was basically, how do you do service management for really large organizations? as things were building up in the 80s and 90s and everyone started having these computers on their desk and these servers, they had to figure out, what are you going to do with all these things and how are you going to help people? That's kind of where ITIL came from originally, but it's evolved over the years as we've moved forward. And we're going to talk about that as well. ITIL is not the same today as it was 30 years ago, though. ITIL was brought about as a way of best practices of how you should run your help desk and your IT organizations. So I always tell my students in my courses, you know, I've run ITIL in small companies and large companies. One of my company, we are about 10 people. We are a very small company and we use ITIL to run our organization. One of my last companies I was with, one of the last organizations I was with, we had 1 million endpoints. So 1 million laptops, desktops, VTCs, and VoIP units around the globe. We were in 6 of 7 continents, dozens of countries, and we still use ITIL in a large organization like that. And in fact, the larger your organization, the better ITIL actually works. So one of the things you're going to see when we start talking about the labor statistics later on is that ITIL is this thing that opens up doors for you in the technology space, because it is one of those things that sets you apart from other people. If you're in the US, most of us are going to have something like an A+, a Net Plus, and a Security Plus, but pretty much everybody has those. And so if you start getting things like ITIL, it starts to show employers that you know how things interconnect inside of the organization, how all these different things tie together. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to give you the 50,000-foot view, which basically means we're going to look at the ground from the airplane. And in our course, which is 8 hours long, we dive into each of these areas in a lot of depth. And today, really what we're dealing with ITIL is we are looking at the way things interconnect and the way things operate between different parts of the organization and the technology itself. So it's not just technology, but it's also the people part and the process part too. So when we talk about ITIL, really the thing that ITIL is focused on is service management. And when we talk about service management, it's really a set of specialized organizational capabilities for enabling value to customers in the form of services. Now that's a really lofty definition, and I have to thank my friends at AXELOS for writing it. But essentially what it means is that we want to make sure that we are giving our customers the best experience. So if you've ever worked in an office building and your computer didn't work, right? Or you worked at the help desk, you usually get that call from somebody that says, the internet is out, it doesn't work. And it's like, well, no, the internet's not out. Your particular connection might be out, your app might be out, there's some kind of broken thing there. But to that customer, they think the entire internet is dead, right? Because they can't do their job. And we are there to try to help them get back into work. So that's what we're going to be talking about with service management. Now, the thing about ITIL is it's not just IT anymore. In ITIL 1, 2, and 3, it was, but as we've evolved, we now look at a wider holistic view of service management as well. When we look at ITIL, we're really trying to provide our organizations with this comprehensive framework. And this ITIL is a framework for ITSM, which is IT Service Management. That's what ITSM stands for. So where ITIL really evolved recently was over the last 2 years. The newest version came out in 2018. And in 2018, we came out with this thing known as ITIL 4, which is ITIL for the fourth revolution, the fourth industrial revolution. So if you think back into your history class in school, we had the first revolution, which was basically how we started using animal power. And then we started getting into the second revolution was when we got into steam and electric power. And then as we got into the third revolution, we got more in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we started getting computers involved in things. Now in the fourth digital revolution, we've taken it a step further and we're starting to integrate technology into our lives in everyday ways. If you look at your watch, if you're like me, you probably don't have one of those new fancy smart watches. I have a traditional old school watch, but I bet if I ask for a show of hands, in fact, you can raise your little hand, how many of you have a smartwatch on? How many of you have a digital cell phone that you carry with you everywhere? How many of you have a car that can drive itself, right? If you have a Tesla or one of the Cadillacs that they can lane keep and drive for you. All of that is how we have integrated cyber and technology into our lives. And that all makes up the fourth industrial revolution. Now, because that's happened, it means that technology now isn't just servers and workstations. It's all these IoT devices, right? It's all these smart TVs and digital thermostats. And I won't say the name of the device that's sitting here on my desk, but if I say it, she'll start talking to me, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. Or if you have Hey Google or Siri, right? I have the other one. And so, all these things are part of our life and part of our home now. And somebody has to support all these things. And that's really what we start looking at this organizational service level. So when I talk about ITIL, like I said, it used to be this information technology infrastructure library. It was very focused on IT, servers, and workstations. With ITIL 4, they've actually done away with that. And now ITIL is no longer an acronym. It's no longer the Information Technology Infrastructure Library. It's just ITIL. It's just a brand name. And that's how people talk about it now. So if you've done ITIL before and you've been familiar with it, and you start saying, the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, those people who are more current are going to look at you kind of funny because that doesn't exist anymore. It used to, and the reason it was called that was it was actually a library of books in version 1, and you pull out the different books to learn how to do help desk or how to do problem management or change management or those type of things. All those things still exist inside ITIL, but it's larger than that now. So what we're going to start with is the first diagram here, and this is the 4 dimensions of service management. So when we talk about service management, we are talking about not just technology, right? Technology is one piece of it. And even if you work in a technology company, I was an IT director of my last job. I had 10,000 employees across multiple countries, as I told you. And in that job, we focused heavily on information technology. But if all we did was look at the information technology, we would be missing the bigger picture. Because when you're in a company and you're running these IT organizations, either if you're running them or working in them, what is the goal of us doing this technology? It's not really for us to do technology for technology's sake. The reason we do technology is to create some kind of value. And you see that at the center of the chart. That's that little pink box. Now, we get value to our customers through delivering products and services. So in my company, I love using my company as an example in my courses because I understand it, and usually my students understand it because they see it and they interact with it. If you're one of my customers and you're going to one of my courses, you're getting a product, a digital video, or an examination voucher to go take a test. You're also getting a service. You're getting the services of us being able to give you support via email, chat, phone calls, that kind of stuff, right? So those are the products and services. And if you think of your organization, let's say you work for Walmart. Walmart, their job when they do IT is not to do IT to run computers. They're running those computers to run their logistics, to run their checkout so they can get customers their groceries that they need, to do delivery of groceries to your house during COVID. All of those things are their different products and services, and they all integrate together to provide that value. Now, to be able to create those products and services and be able to deliver those products and services reliably, we have to consider these 4 dimensions. So the first one we have is the organizations and people. So when we talk about organizations and people, we are talking about the traditional organizational chart in your organization, right? So in the organization I was, we had a CEO, we had a COO, so the chief executive officer, the chief operating officer. We had a CIO, which was the chief information officer. And each of these had different departments they would run. The COO was really focused on making sure that the products and services that we were doing as a business got out there that needed to be done. The CIO was making sure we had all the technology to support those operations folks to do their job. Because we don't care if the computer was up or down, it didn't matter. It mattered if the guy could do his job to be able to deliver that value to the customer. So when we look at organizations and people, we're really focused on the organization chart. Are you flat or are you hierarchical? Some organizations have this very upright structure. If you work with the DoD, the military, they are extremely hierarchical, right? If you're a contractor for them, you're going to have a boss, and that boss is going to have a boss, and his boss is going to have a boss, and it's going to go all the way up to the top where you have all the bosses in line. Other organizations, especially some of the Silicon Valley startups, tend to be a lot more flat. And so everybody is working agilely, and they're working across the place, and they have very few hierarchical bosses. And that's a different way of doing it. So when you look at your organization, you have to define how you're going to set up your organization. And then the people part is, who are you going to hire? What do they look like? Are they older, younger, black, white, Hispanic, whatever it is? What skills do they have? All of that goes into your organization and your culture and your people. And there's a whole lot of going into that as you go through the recruiting and the hiring and all the certifications you want in the background. The second part is a little bit more obvious. It's the information technology, right? It's the bits and the trons. It's the computers on people's desk. It's the servers. And you have to define that as well. Are you going to do things on-premise or in the cloud? And if you are going to do it in the cloud, what level of support do you need? Do you need a SaaS product, an IaaS product, a PaaS product? Lots of different levels you can do in cloud, right? Do you need a private cloud, a public cloud, or a community cloud? All of that gets defined inside this information technology space. Then we go into partners and suppliers. And when we talk about partners and suppliers, we start thinking outside the organization. So when I was talking about organizations and people, I'm internally focused at my company. How is my structure set up? What departments am I going to have? What people am I going to hire? When I start talking about partners and suppliers, I start thinking outside. So my company, as an example, I am partnered with PeopleCert. And they are also one of my suppliers. So when you come to my course, I give you an exam voucher to take your exam at the end of the course and get certified. I don't create that exam voucher out of thin air. I buy it from PeopleCert. They're one of my suppliers, but they're only one of my suppliers. I also partner with Capita. I also partner with Linux Professional Institute, right? And then I also have suppliers like Amazon who gives me web hosting, and all those other type of things all tie together, right? So, and then we got the value streams and processes. Now, the value streams and processes is where a lot of the greatness of ITIL comes from. When we talk about a value stream, and I'm going to show you a picture of what one looks like later, it's basically the flow of things as they go through. So again, I'm going to use my company as an example. If you went to my website, you go to the checkout page, you enter your credit card, and you hit buy, there's going to be a series of steps that happen to charging your credit card, adding you to our email list, adding you into our course, sending you an exam voucher, getting you into the course, and then we have to deliver that course where you watch the videos, you take the quizzes, you get the practice exams, you read the study guide, you get to the end of the course, you get ready, and then you go take the certification exam. And that end-to-end process is one value stream for us. It's, you know, the student's ITIL 4 foundation experience. We have another one for Prince2. We have another one for CompTIA stuff. We have all these different value streams for different things we do in our company. And then we have all the processes that make up those value streams. So when I say the checkout process, that's one block in the value stream. But to actually have that checkout, it's my server communicating with another server, which communicates with the credit card processor, which communicates with the bank. And all that has to happen in that process to charge your credit card, right? As an example. So when we put all those together, that's the internal part that we're really focused on and the closeness. And then around the outside, we have all of the other factors that affect us, which are known as pestle factors. So these are things like political, P, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental. So that's why we get pestle. And these are things that focus in on your company from the outside. And in ITIL, if you go up to the leader level, we focus a lot on these pestle factors. For the foundation, we don't really talk about them much. We're more focused on our organization and direct things. But when we talk about political, for instance, or let's use environmental, that's a great example. 2020 was a heck of a year, right? Nobody really saw COVID coming. And then that thing was an environmental factor that shifted everybody's business model. I know a lot of training organizations, they are in-person training. You go to their class, you sit there for a week, you go through the course, you get your certification. They had to shift their entire business model online. And a lot of them weren't ready for that shift. My company, we focus on online. That's our primary means of training. So for us, when COVID happened, we didn't have to have a shift. So that environmental factor didn't affect us very badly, but it did affect a lot of other companies. And so depending on where you work, that may or may not have had a big effect on your organizations, right? And how you're going to do things. So that's definitely something you want to think about. All right, so that brings us through the 4 dimensions and the external side. So I'm going to keep moving forward here, and then I will get to your questions, I promise. So when we get to this is what is known as the service value chain. And basically we start on the left side, which is the opportunity and demand, and we move through the service value chain in the middle to get to value. So we have some opportunity, such as we saw there's I don't know, COVID was happening. So we decided that our traditional brick and mortar grocery store needs to start doing online food delivery. So we see an opportunity there. We then are going to go through the service value chain, create some sort of system, website, process, all that stuff. And then out the other side is food going from the grocery store into a delivery driver's car over to the customer. That's where we get that end-to-end value. We'll break open that service value chain in a second as well. And then working across these things, we have the guiding principles, the governance, the practices, and the continual improvement that implement as part of that service value chain as well. So when I look at the service value chain, I break it apart, it looks something like this. And these are the different phases of ITIL. Now in the old V3, if you've ever, for those of you who were familiar with it, it was a very life cycle driven approach. There was a strategy, and then you designed a product, and then you transitioned the product, and then you got into operations where you supported the product and you spent 70% of your life there. And then at the end, you would retire the product. And all around that, we do continual improvement. In ITIL 4, they realized that was too slow of a way of going. So if any of you have worked with the government before, I have, they are a very, very slow organization. If I put in a requirement today and say, I need a new piece of software, how long do you think it's going to take me to get it? Generally around 12 to 24 months. It is a slow, painful process. There's all these things that go through. And that's because they really adopted the older ITIL 3 model, and they went through, you have to have a plan, you have to design it, you have to transition it, which goes through all the security and everything. And eventually you get something that gets into operations, and then it sits there for 10 or 15 years until it's too old and you can't replace it anymore and you throw it away and then you go get the next version. And you keep doing that over and over. So in ITIL 4, that went out the window because one of the big complaints with ITIL 3 was it wasn't agile enough. And I'm sure you guys have heard the term agile over and over again now in recent years, because that's really what everybody is doing. Sorry, Dennis, I didn't mean to wake up your phone. You must have an iPhone or a Google, one of the two, because I said that. Sorry, I was just looking at the chat. I shouldn't do that. I get myself distracted. So anyway, so in the service value chain, so what we're doing is we have this opportunity. And so we would engage as our first step. We might go and talk to people and say, what are the requirements you need for this service? So if I was going to build something for this grocery store we were talking about, I would go and meet with them and say, what are your requirements? Well, I need to have something so I can take orders from customers, pick the products and deliver the products. Oh, and charge the people, right? So those are probably the 4 things I need. And I need it done in 3 weeks because we're in the middle of COVID and we need this now, right? So we would get all those requirements as part of the engage. And then we would give that over to the obtain build guides. And obtain means we're going to go buy stuff. So maybe there's some off the shelf product that we can buy, like a software as a service that will allow us to enter in all of our products and turn it on and say, yep, we're ready to take orders right now. Or maybe there's not, and we have to build something custom. So that's obtain or build. Then we go up into design and transition. Design is where we're going to design all this stuff. And as we design it, we then go out back to obtain and build to go buy all those pieces, build it. And then we get to transitions where we test it, make sure it's ready, put it into operations. Once we put it in operations, we're in deliver and support. That's where we are delivering something to the customer, that service or product, that digital service. And when they have problems and they go, hey, the internet's down, I can't order something, I put one thing in my cart and 5 showed up, we go back to support. And that kind of is more your help desk and service desk functions. Now, when you do all this, it's not a clear line going through. As you build out your services, and so one of the things we dive deep into in the ITIL Create, Deliver, and Support course is how do you build these services? You have to think about all the different flow of things. So as I kind of went through before in my example, when you buy something from me, you go to my website, you go to the landing page, you enter your credit card, and it goes through these different steps, 1 through 20 steps to get to the output. When you're building a service, sometimes it's not a linear thing. You might go from step 1 to 2 to 3, back to 2, over to 4, back to 2, over to 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, and sometimes you have to bounce around. And so as we dig into ITIL, you'll see that this is a much more agile way of working. You can go from box to box. You don't have to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 anymore. It's all based on the service flow, based on your product that you're building. And you see on the top, we have plan. That's where we want to think out what is the things we're going to need now, in 3 weeks, in 3 months, in 3 years, and build out our strategy. And then improve is where we constantly are looking at what we're doing and improving it. All the time, we're looking at our services and our products and going, how can we make it faster, cheaper, better, more efficient, right? Because that's going to make bigger profit for us, or we're getting better experience for our customers. Both of those are good things. So that's what we're going to look at with that. Okay, so going back to this diagram, the next one I want to talk about is the top one, which is guiding principles. One of the things we talk about in ITIL is these guiding principles, and there are 7 guiding principles. So these are the things that in everything we do, we always kind of keep these in mind. It's kind of our North Star. So as we are working with people, right, one of the things we want to do is we want to start where we are. So if I get to an organization and it's my first day as the IT director or the service desk manager, for instance, I'm going to go in, and before I start changing everything, because we all know every good manager must change everything a lot in the first 30 days or they suck, right? That's just the way it is in business. Everyone thinks they have to put their own unique spin on things. What I always recommend is start where you are. When you get there, spend the first 30 days looking at how they're doing business. Figure out, are they doing it well or are they not doing it well? Where are the areas of improvement? You can't just say, we're going to throw the whole thing away and start over. That's not a good way of doing it. Start where you are, and then we'll incrementally add things. And that brings us to the one at the top, progress iteratively with feedback. So if I have a system that's kind of working, but it's not efficient yet, we can use that to get people service today. And then we can say, okay, well, this isn't perfect. It's an 80% solution. What can I do to get it to 85? Let me take this next chunk and we'll focus on that for the next 2 weeks. And then we do that. We put it out into the marketplace. We see what people say and we say, okay, people like it or they didn't like it. Let's go ahead and iterate again. And we keep adding little pieces on as we get better feedback. I mentioned earlier, I used to work with the government, and the government way, when you build something, you design everything up front. And sometimes you have to do that. If you're building a nuclear reactor or a submarine, you kind of have to build it all up front. But when we're building software, we don't have to build everything up front. Instead, we can build it modular, and we can build small pieces and then add as we go. So version 1 doesn't have to be perfection. Version 1 has to be good enough to get it shipped. Once you get it out there, you can start collecting feedback from your customers. And they say, you know what, Jason, your app I hate that blue color that you have on the screen. I really wish it was pink. And if I get enough complaints from customers, I might change it and make it pink. In fact, I had the opposite. I used to have a purplish pink background on my Prince2 courses, and students hated it. They kept saying, this is horrible. And the reason I chose that is I was trying to match it to the Prince logo with their color scheme, and the students didn't like it because it was just too much pinkish purple. So we got rid of that and we went to the blue. But that was based on feedback we got from customers. When you talk about keeping it simple and practical, really the idea is, why make things more complicated than they need to be? If you don't need 20 steps to do something, go ahead and make it 5 steps, right? Every time you look at your flow and your process of what it takes to deliver some service, you should be looking at it in the lens of, what can I cut out? And one of the things with keep it simple and practical that's really important is, you don't have to automate everything 100%. I see a lot of organizations do this. So like, I'm going to make a chat bot and it's going to answer every customer support question there possibly is. You're going to drive yourself crazy. Instead, if you can figure out what the top 5 questions are, give the chatbot those. And then for the other questions, push it to a human, because a human can think faster than having to program all that if-then logic. So it's a great way to do it. Next thing, when you keep it simple and practical, next thing you want to do is, you have this system of way of doing things. You now want to optimize it and then automate. Notice it says optimize, then automate. I have seen so many people who will automate first and then optimize. In my company, every time we're going to do something new, before we ever code something, we run that program and we do it manually with people first. We write down all the steps and we go through that for a couple of cycles. As we start seeing what works and what doesn't, we can then better the process. We're optimizing it, we're figuring out, and then once we've optimized it, then we automate it. When I started selling exam vouchers, that was one of the things we did. We used to do it where, when you order an exam voucher, we would get an email that said, you have a new order. We would then go buy the voucher, send it an email back to you. It was a very manual process. Over time, we figured out the right steps and the right orders, and we got it down to 4 steps. And now, if you go to my site to buy your exam voucher, literally you put in your credit card, you hit submit, and within 2 minutes, you have an email with that next exam voucher in your box. And we've optimized that, and then we automated it, and now we can step back and we just let the systems do it. That's where you want to get to. Collaborate and promote visibility. This is where you want to be a team member. You want to make sure you're not having secrets. If the operations folks don't know what the tech guys are doing, and the tech guys don't know what the marketing guys are doing, it's a recipe for disaster, because everything relies on tech these days. We are kind of the glue that holds organizations together. So we have to communicate with other people, and they have to communicate with us. It should never be a secret thing. Everything should be kind of out in the open. Think and work holistically. This is where we want to, again, not be pigeonholed. I can't count the number of times I've gotten a request from somebody that says, the boss doesn't like this tool because it's not doing X, Y, Z. And they don't give me enough detail to actually solve the person's problem. It's just, I get, the boss doesn't like this. Well, what doesn't he like about this? He just doesn't like it. Well, that's not going to help me if I'm just looking at that one area. So I need to get a bigger overview. And so I have to get all the stakeholders together, and we got to start talking about, okay, what is it that we don't like? How can we make this better? All the different parts of the organization, think about it like a car. You can't just take a piece of the car out without the car breaking. Same thing with your organizations. All the pieces need to mesh together and work well. And I think I didn't talk about focus on value, and this is one of my favorite ones. The idea with ITIL is, our job, and as I said earlier, is we're not doing IT for the sake of doing IT. We're doing IT to create a value, and value is co-created between the service provider and the service consumer. And I always tell this to my students, right? If you're taking my course, I can't teach you ITIL. I can show you the information. I can give you the information. I can give you study tips. I can help you pass the exam. But really, when it comes to teaching, I'm just talking. You have to listen on the other side and apply it in your own head as well, right? So it's a co-creation of value. And it's the same thing if we think about something like Uber. If you want to use the Uber service, they put some requirements on you as a customer. You have to have a cell phone. You have to have a data plan. You have to have GPS enabled. And if you don't, their service can be the best service in the world, but you can't use it. You can't get any value from it. And so you have to co-create that. You bring some things to the table, whether that's some technology, some service, some information, and they bring some things, which might be the software, the drivers, the routing systems, the payment systems. And putting those together, we get the value, which is you getting from the airport to your hotel in an Uber, right? That's the idea. All right. And then the next thing we're going to do is go underneath the service value chain. We have practices. And this is a huge part of ITIL. There are 34 practices in ITIL. Now, when I talk about a practice, really we break these down into 3 areas. These are general management practices, service management practices, and technical management practices. Now, when we talk about a practice, really, it's just a set of organized resources that are designed for performing work or accomplishing an objective. You probably know a lot of these practices already, at least you've heard of them if you've worked in IT for any length of time. So, for example, there are 14 general management practices. These aren't just in IT, these are general management practices, right? So it's things like continual improvement, information security, relationship management, supplier management, architecture management, knowledge management, measurement and reporting. God, everybody loves metrics, right? Organizational change management, portfolio management, project management, risk management, service financial management, strategy management, and workforce and talent management. Are you hiring the right people? Do they have the right skill set? All of these are general management practices in business. And guess what? ITIL talks about all of these. Then we go into our 17 management practices. And with our 17 management practices, we're talking about change enablement, incident management, problem management, service desk, service level management, and service request management. This is a lot of the IT operations stuff. If you've ever worked in a help desk or a service desk, you've worked in network administration or server administration, you've lived this world. Then we have some other ones, IT asset management, monitoring and event management, release management. How do we get software out into the environment? And service configuration management. We also have availability management, business analysis, capacity and performance management, which is, do I have enough servers to support the load? A lot easier these days with cloud computing, right? Service catalog management. Am I offering the right tools to my audience? Service continuity management, service design, and service validation and testing. So all of that is our service management practices. And then we have 3 technical management practices. These are deployment management. How do I get software into the environment or other pieces of stuff into the environment? Infrastructure and platform management. How do I look at the overall stuff and make sure it's working right? And then software development and management. If I'm building my own tools, I'm going to have to do some of that. So again, we don't have time in this hour to cover all 34 of these, obviously, but it is something that we do cover as you go through your ITIL training. All right. So that is all of that part. And then the last thing we need to talk about on this chart is the bottom, continual improvement. So continual improvement is a practice, but it's also something that we spend a lot of time in ITIL because we always want to be improving our organizations. So when we look at that, we are going to have a 7-step method. First, we ask, what's our vision? Where are we trying to get to, right? Then we say, where are we now? We talked about it before. We need to start where we are. Then we say, where do I want to be? So the vision is like my 5-year goal. I want to be the best training company on the planet. I want to help 1 million students get certified, right? Where am I now? Well, I have 300,000 students that I've helped get certified. That's a lot of students. I'm 1/3 of the way of where I want to be. Where do I want to be? I want to be at 1 million, but this year I want to get to 500,000. So I need 200,000 people this year. How do I get there? Well, I'm going to do things like video training, webinars. I might put out some free content on YouTube to get people to understand that I'm here. All those different types of things, right? You can figure out what your strategy is going to be to get there. And then take action. Okay, we said these are the 3 things we're going to do. Let's go out and do those things. And then we stop and we look and say, okay, we did those 3 things. How did it work for us? If we wanted to get 200,000 by the end of the year, and I look in 6 months and I've only done 50,000, I'm probably not going to get to 200. I need to be at 100 by 6 months, right? So based on that, I either need to keep going if I'm on pace, or I need to speed up, and then we can start again, seeing how we can figure it. It's this rotational continual improvement that you're always doing for all your services and everything you do in your organization. Frank, no problem. Hopefully I'll see you later. And this will definitely be here as you go back later to check it. So enjoy the meeting. All right. So with that said, I kept it down to 30 minutes. Good. All right. So that is the ITIL portion of our talk. I'm going to turn it over to Erin from AXELOS again. And she's going to talk a little bit on the job side of the numbers we're seeing out in the marketplace, what certifications are valuable, and things of that nature. So Erin, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll push the slides for you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Van. I appreciate it. So at AXELOS, one of the things that we wanted to do was kind of help demonstrate to people who are considering our certifications why it is they should maybe look at investing in taking an ITIL exam or a PRINCE2 exam, for example. It's a lot of effort and energy to do these kinds of things. So, you know, why should you do it? What's in it for you, really? I had some budget set aside, and we have purchased access to the US's largest database of online jobs in the United States. This is using advanced artificial intelligence text mining to code 70+ facts about online job postings. So what you'll here is around 45,000 sites daily, including job boards, direct employer sites, government sites, and online newspapers. This is where this job data is coming from. And then from those sites, they collect and deduplicate about 1 million job postings daily. So essentially those 45,000 sites are probably more like 100, maybe 150,000 websites. But for example, Craigslist might have 10 different postings, of a single job, one in Tennessee, one in New York. And so this data that you're about to look at is truly, distilled, pure data. And just to note some of those data elements, this includes the job title, the employer and the industry, technical skills, certifications associated with these. So we're going to kind of focus on the salary and the just go straight to the heart of the matter and look at some of those things. So for your information, idle hiring salaries. So on average for individuals where there are roles being posted right now in the United States and they're requiring an ITIL certification and where they do post the salary, you're looking at in and around $88,000 as a median. So normally people who have experience tend to be a little bit higher in salary range, but minimally or kind of at a median level, you're looking at around $88,000. You couple that with a bachelor's degree and you're pushing over 90,000. And, essentially it's just to call out that, folks that are hiring for ITIL roles, you're kind of starting to get into those higher salary numbers, pushing the 6-figure salary mark relatively soon in your career if you have an ITIL certification. Next, I want to point out the top occupations associated with ITIL. And as Jason's about to move into PRINCE2 and share some things with you about PRINCE2, what's interesting here, if you take a look at the top occupations, so for example, of the jobs being posted in the US right now, the #1 role type asking for an ITIL cert is computer support specialist, followed by software developer. And then under that, you've got the IT project manager. And I just want to call that out for a moment, because if you sort of pivot your eyes over to the right side of the screen and you look at the PRINCE2 job occupations, you see project manager obviously at the top, but then right under that is IT project manager. And something that I find that even correlates these two together, because these are representative of what's being posted out in the marketplace. Additionally, we have access to LinkedIn Labor Insights, and we did a job search there for individuals that have on their LinkedIn sites, if they are holding an ITIL certification, the #1 role type for these individuals is actually project manager. So there are in many ways synergies between these two products. So I think with that, I'll let Jason take it back over and talk a little bit about PRINCE2.
Awesome. Yeah, before we jump into PRINCE2, just want to wrap up ITIL real quick. A lot of people ask, what does ITIL look like? Most of us are familiar with things like the CompTIA career path. You go from A+ to Net+ to Security+, CISA and Pen Test, you work your way up. ITIL has a similar career path. It's a little bit different though, because it's kind of, they tell you what you need on the top and the bottom, but the middle you kind of get to choose as you go. So on the bottom, you're going to start with ITIL Foundation. That's the first way to get into ITIL. And I will tell you that a lot of the jobs that are asking for ITIL, when HR asks for it in the job description, they will say ITIL certified. They won't say ITIL Master Certified or ITIL Managing Professional Certified or whichever one. They just say ITIL Certified. And when they say that, that means they're looking for at least an ITIL Foundation. You're going to see a lot of jobs out there asking for that. So I do recommend to all the folks I work with to definitely go at least to the ITIL Foundation level, because that's going to give you the overview. Basically, the stuff I just talked about, we would cover all of that, but we actually dig into each of those areas and make sure you understand how service management works and how it benefits the organization. The big thing with ITIL is it ties the organization together. It's all how everything interconnects. And that's why employers find it really valuable. It's not just, a lot of people have this conception that ITIL is just the help desk certification, and it's not. I've worked most of my career in the last 15 years in cybersecurity and upper level executive IT management. And ITIL is one of those things that we always are looking for in our candidates, because it means that that person who has this pen testing specialty or analyst specialty, they also understand the operations side of it and how all these things connect together. So that's really the benefit. Once you get foundation, you then can go up to that middle layer, which is those big tall boxes. And each of those is its own individual certification as well. So ITIL Specialist for Create, Deliver, and Support. It's really focused on the help desk and service desk, and that's really the main crux of that, where 70% of IT spending is in Create, Deliver, and Support. So if you had to choose one other one to get, that's the one I always recommend. If you're on the management side, then I look more for Direct, Plan, and Improve, which is more about vision, mission, planning, metrics, and all that strategies type stuff. And then we have in the middle the two newer ones, which is High Velocity IT and Drive Stakeholder Value. High Velocity IT is a really cool course. And we talk about basically the Silicon Valley startups and how IT is done there. We talk a lot about cloud and serverless and the way that we're doing things where we can pivot on a dime and really get things out very, very, very quickly. Because it is a different way of working when you're working in a high velocity environment. For instance, I've worked at companies where it can take us 2 years to get a product out. I've worked at companies where it can take us 2 weeks to get a product out. If you look at companies like Netflix, they do commits to push out to production 10 to 12 times per day. If you want to get to that level, that's what High Velocity IT is focused on. And then Drive Stakeholder Value is another one that's a new one for ITIL. And it's really focused on the customer journey. It's all of the touch points for a customer as they go through their interactions with the company. Everything from when you start talking to them and marketing to them, to engaging with them, selling them, giving them the product, and then the follow-up on the outside, on the other side as well. So even if you're not a technical person, right, and you're more on the marketing side or you're in the operations side, Drive Stakeholder Value is a really cool one as well. And then the newest one is the one all the way on the far right, which is the ITIL Leader Certification. This one is unique. You have to have at least 3 years of management experience before you can take that course. And all the ones in the middle, you have to have ITIL Foundation first. Now, if you collect the 4 on the left and Foundation, like baseball cards, collect them all, you get to be a managing professional, which is the equivalent of an ITIL expert from the old V3 system. This is where you start getting into those really $80, $90, $100, $120,000 a year salaries is once you're at that managing professional level. The strategic leader on the other side, this is designed more for the executive path and IT directors. And if you want to be like an IT director or a CIO or a CSO one day, that's more the path for you. Now, if you get both of those paths, you can move up to the ITIL Master. ITIL Master is a very unique designation. Right now, I think there's about 50 to 75 in the world. So if you get to that level, you're like in very rarefied air, very rare company. So keep that in mind. So that's kind of the path of how things are laid out for the ITIL world. And that's why ITIL is so sought after by employers and recruiters at this point. All right, now I'm going to switch over. As Aaron said, we're going to tie ITIL over to Prince2 because one of the things that a lot of people who do ITIL is change management, project management, and things of that nature. So that's where we're going to get over to there. I am not a master yet, Aaron, because I had not finished the full V3 path because I switched over to V4 when it came out. And I just never took the time to get the last exam I needed and do the master. So I'm waiting for the new, I've already talked with AXELOS, the folks over in the UK. I'm on the list, on the short list to go into the ITIL master when the 4.1 is released. They haven't released the requirements for ITIL 4 yet. For the ITIL
well, you've got my vote, Jason.
Yeah, I know I've got Roman's also, so I've talked with him about it. Roman's one of the guys who wrote the books on ITIL, so he's like one of the top guys over there as well. All right, so we're going to switch over into project management because, again, IT project management touches both of these areas. Now, when we talk about Prince2 and project management, it doesn't have to be IT. Now, we're going to talk more about the IT side of it because that's where I've spent most of my career, and you all are BIT. You're interested in technology. So, but I just want to point that out that Prince2 is not an IT project management cert. It's a project management cert. And so if you're going to be an IT project manager, you should get ITIL Foundation and then go into Prince2, or get ITIL Foundation and do PMP. And we'll talk about the difference between those two as well, because I know your organization is a worldwide organization and not just in the US. All right, so what is Prince2? Like ITIL, it is a best practice. It is a collection of best practices and the best way to do project management. That is what AXELOS does. They collect best practices. They do a lot of research on it. They do a lot of white papers. They figure out what works across organizations. And then they write books to tell everybody this is how you should do things and make these practice guides out there. So when we talk about Prince2, Prince2 is actually the world's most popular project management methodology. Now I say that, but if you're a US audience, you may never have heard of Prince2 before because in the US, you can probably write this in chat. What do you guys think is the most popular project management certification in the US right now? Go ahead and throw it in chat if you know. PMP, yep, definitely PMP. Even Erin says it, and she works for AXELOS. So yeah, PMP, right? Which is the Project Management Institute. Why is it so popular in the US? Because they're a US-based company. Prince2 is from a UK-based company. PMP is more of the how to do project management. It's more step-by-step, as opposed to Prince2, which is a framework and a best practice. So they're not in competition with each other. I know a lot of people who are both PMP and Prince2. Right now, AXELOS is doing a big push into the United States with Prince2. So you're going to hear Prince2 a lot more in the coming years inside the US. If you ever worked outside the US, if you've been in Europe, Prince2 is what everybody uses. They don't use PMP over here. I say over here because I'm actually, right now, I'm working on a long-term contract in Italy as an IT director, getting their ITILs done, getting them all process improved, and they are all Prince2 over here. They don't do PMP. The US is really big on PMP. Canada, it's a mixture of both, PMP and Prince2. India, it depends on which company is kind of headquartered. If it's a US company, it's PMP. If it's a European or a Canadian company, it's usually going to be Prince2. So depending on where you are in the world, one or the other or both are popular. Prince2 is, though, the world's most popular project management methodology. Between Prince2 and PMP, they're both, right up there. And I'll talk about the differences with them and why you may want to look at Prince2 as opposed to PMP, or why you might want to do PMP, because both of them are good. So Prince2 focuses on 3 key areas, and our courses are broken down this way too. It's the principles, the themes, and the processes. And I like to call Prince2 the game of sevens, because there are 7 principles, 7 themes, and 7 processes. So there's 21 things you really have to know to do projects well, and that's what they cover. So when we talk about Prince2, we have these principles at the bottom, and then we layer on the themes, and all of that surrounds the processes. And all of this makes up the project environment, which is where we get this little cool graphic from. So when we talk about Prince2, one of the great things that I love about Prince2 versus PMP is that Prince2 is really tailorable. If you're a big company, a small company, a medium-sized company, you can take these concepts and you can upsize them or downsize them to fit your needs. So they don't have to be burdensome. But if you're in a really large organization, they may be burdensome, right? If you're not burdensome, but they're needed, there's a lot of paperwork involved if you're going to go that direction, right? So it depends on what level you need. For instance, if you're going to do a very small project, one of the things we talk about in Prince2 is this thing called a business case. And the business case, if you're doing a small project, may be a single PowerPoint slide that says, hey boss, I need $1 million to build this thing. It's going to take me 4 weeks. And here's my basic plan. And you go to them and ask for the money, right? If you're doing a big project, like, I don't know, maybe the Olympics, they use Prince2 to plan out the Olympic Games. And they have for the last several years, several iterations of it. That's a really big project, right? If you're going to build a bridge, you're going to build a subway, you're going to build a train, all of those are big projects. And so you'd want to have more controls and more governance. And Prince2 really is focused on giving you that governance and that framework. So how does Prince2 compare to PMP? Because I know every time I talk to an audience that has heard of PMP in project management, they always go, well, what's the differences? What's the same? So Prince2 really focuses on what to do, right? We want to do these things so that we get a good result. PMP is much more directive. It really tells you how to do it. This is the format you should have this paper in. These are the steps you should take. And so because of that, they actually work well together. They're not in competition. Prince2 is a methodology and it uses processes. So it says, hey, these are the ways you want to do things in the timelines and the frequencies and where you should have handover points so you can have good progress. With PMP, it's a standard based on the PMBOK, the Project Management Body of Knowledge, which is written by PMI, and a knowledge base. Now, these certifications, I said, they're not in competition with each other. They can be used with each other. And one of the things that's really good about Prince2 is that the requirement to get Prince2 versus PMP is significantly different. And we get to the last slide when I talk about the career path for Prince2, I'll mention exactly the differences there. When we talk about Prince2, what they started with was a single question. When they looked at a bunch of projects, they looked at hundreds and thousands of projects, and they said, why did this one succeed and this one fail? And when you look at projects, if you've ever worked in project management, the number of successful projects is about 25 to 30% that are actually on time, on budget. Most projects are over budget, over time, or they just never even get done. and they're just not even viable anymore. So Prince2 want to say, how can we solve that? Now, is it a magic pill? Is it going to solve all your problems? No, but it's going to give you a better chance of starting out and getting there. It's going to start, you know, on the 100-yard line and a 200-yard dash. So you want to do things that can help you out, especially if you're a project manager. Now, when they looked at it, they said any project that was missing one of these 7 things was likely to fail. And that's where they came up with the 7 principles. And so these 7 principles were really focused on making sure that your projects will be successful. So they're the foundation. And if you remember when I showed you this picture, they're down here at the bottom, right? They are the foundation. So when we talk about those 7 principles, what are they? They are things like a continued business justification. If you're doing a project, you have to have a continued business justification. Otherwise, why are you continuing to spend money? And I know this sounds like common sense, but I've seen a lot of projects out there that they started it 5 years ago and they're still going because they feel like they're committed and they have to keep going, even though they don't need to anymore. Let's say I was going to set up a fair, right? And I was going to do a fair in the summer of 2020. So I have all this stuff done. I've bought in the rides, I've gotten the candy, I've gotten the vendors, everything's set up. And then COVID happens and I know that my attendance is going to go from 10,000 to 50 people, right? Should I still run the fair? Some people would say, yeah, we're still going to do it because we already feel like we have to. No, there's no longer continued business justification. There's not enough people who are going to buy that product, that project at the end and go to the fair because conditions have changed. So if your conditions change, it's okay to cancel a project. Next thing you want to do is you want to learn from experience. You are not the first person who's done anything most of the time. Even if I wanted to send a rocket ship to the moon, somebody else has done that before. So I should probably talk to those people and learn from what they've done. I should do small experiments and learn from those experiments and then get bigger. And that's what we did in the United States as part of our space program. We didn't say the first rocket we put out there was going straight to the moon. No, we first got it to suborbital, then we got it to rotate the Earth, and then we got it further and further until we finally got to the moon. And we did a couple of laps around the moon without landing, and then we finally landed somebody on the moon, right? We learned from our experiences and we kept moving forward in those projects. We also want to have defined roles and responsibilities. Nothing drives me crazier than when somebody sends an email to 5 people and says, this needs to get done. Okay, who's doing it, right? Define who's going to do it. So anytime I send an email on a project, I always say, John, I need you to do this. Mary, I need you to do this. And what I like to call is pin the rows on them so they know you're the person I'm looking at. You have a defined role and responsibility. Not just in the tasks, that's a very tactical level, but in the project as a whole. Who is your change manager? Who's your risk manager? Who's your project manager? Who's your assistant? Who's going to do the quality assurance? Figure those things out and define those things. Another thing you want to do is manage by stages. Don't try to eat the elephant in one bite. Break it down. If I'm going to build a car, there are many different things I need to do to get that car to the final product. Or a house is a great example. We all can probably relate to a house. A couple of years ago when I lived in Maryland, I built a house. I didn't build it. I paid somebody to build the house, but we went through the process of building the house, right? I'm a technical guy. You don't want me building houses. But what we ended up doing was we found a piece of land we liked and we said, this is the house we want. We showed them, they said, okay, great. We're going to do this in 3 stages. Are you comfortable with that? And I was, because this particular person built 500 houses in the last 3 years. He knew how to build a house. So if it was his first house, I might've done it in 12 stages. And that way I had shorter stages so I could check in more often. Or if it's somebody that knows what they're doing, in the case of this guy, he was able to clear the land and pour the foundation and then stop and we checked it. And then we built the structure and then we stopped and we checked it. And then we put up the drywall and we stopped and we checked it. And then we went and put in all the finishes and gave us the house, right? You have these checkpoints along the way, and that's what managed by stages is. Managed by exception. This is a big one. It's trying to get out of the micromanagement business. So instead, you give your team and the people in your project their left and right limits. So I might say, for instance, to my web team, because we're building a new website right now, I've told them, your budget for this project is $10,000. If you're going to be less than 9,000 or more than 11,000, I need to know. So I gave them a 10% variance. And so as long as they keep it inside that budget and they're on their schedule, that's fine. But as soon as they think they're going to go out, even before they go out, if they think they're going to go out, they have to call me up and say, hey, we spent $3,000 on this that we thought was going to be $1,500. I think we're going to be over budget. And then we would look, do we still have a continued business justification, or is this now too expensive? And that's a silly example for $500, but if they were over by $50,000, we might say, ooh, too much, we're not going to go that way. And so these are the things you want to think about. Focus on products. The idea with Prince2 is we are not focused on the process, we are focused on the products, the thing we are trying to build. And when they talk about products in Prince2, we're actually talking about the management products that we're creating. So it's things like the documents, the charts. The whole purpose of us when we go to work is to get things done. If you're a project manager, you're going to be busy documenting projects, building Gantt charts, checking budgets, making sure the risk register is done, making sure the quality register is done, all those kinds of things. And then finally, tailor to suit the project. If I have a small project, I need small governance. If I have a big project, I should have big governance. If I'm building an aircraft carrier that's $1 billion, there should be a lot of checkpoints and a lot of governance over that thing. If I'm building a little doghouse in my backyard that's going to be $300, probably don't need all that governance. So tailor your products to suit that environment. All right, so that brings us now up to the themes. When we talk about the themes, we have 7 of them. Sorry, I have them on here. 7 of them. We'll start with the business case at the top there. A business case is basically saying, why are we doing this project? How much is it going to cost? What's our basic plan for it? Kind of the overall thing of it. And we bring that up and we get approval for that business case before we move forward. And the business case always needs to remain valid. If it stops being valid, we go away. Yeah, so Aaron, Aaron had asked a question to all panelists. So I'm not sure if you guys can see it or if only I can see it, but she asked, do I associate managed by stages as not being agile? And can I explain? Yes. So I do not think that managed by stages does not mean it's not agile. In fact, I run agile project management most of the time in what I do. I don't like waterfall where you plan everything out up front and then go forward. And that's what a lot of people think when they think project management is. I have to plan out everything for the next 5 years for this thing. You can do things in an agile way. So when I talk about a stage in agile though, I'm not talking about 3 months usually. I'm usually talking about 2 weeks. And so if you take if you take Scrum and you take the sprints that you do in Scrum, which is 1 week or 2 week normally, that is a stage. And so at the end of that 2 weeks, we're going to stop and see if we met the progress we needed to move into the next stage, which would be the next sprint. So Agile and Prince2 actually do work well together. And I'll talk a little bit about that towards the end as well. Yeah, so that's the business case part. Organization, just like we talked about organization back in ITIL, we have organization here too, because we need to understand what our organization is going to look like. Who's going to do what, define roles and responsibilities, and are we going to do this in teams? Are we going to do it in a, if we're going to do more of a team member thing, like we're doing Scrum, we build things around teams. If we're doing things agilely. If we're going to do things in a waterfall method, well, we're going to have suppliers that we have to bring in. If I'm building my house, I had the guy who did the framing. I had the plumber who came in and did things. I had the interior designer who did things. I had the person who brought the appliances in. Those are different workmen and different teams and work people that brought their skill sets in to build this full thing. And organization helps us do that. Quality, pretty self-explanatory. You want to have quality in your products. So you have checkpoints along the way to verify the products you're creating are good and the thing you're building is going to meet up to the requirements that were set out in the business case. Plans. Planning is really important, right? When you're thinking about what you want to do, if we're going to hold the next Olympics in 4 years, we have 4 years to get that thing ready. And usually that means building a stadium, getting it all ready, getting the programs, getting the countries involved, getting all that stuff. We have to figure out how are we going to plan that. Is it going to be 1 stage, 5 stages? Are we doing it over 5 years, 1 year? What's that going to look like? Risk. Everything we do has risk. If we're building a house, there's a lot of risk in that. And so risk is really one of the processes, one of the themes that we have to focus on with risk management. Are we going to accept risk, transfer risk, mitigate risk, or avoid risk? Those are our 4 risk measures that we can do. And if you've taken Security Plus, you've heard those 4 before. If you've been in IT security, you've definitely heard those 4. And in a project, you have risk and you have to manage risk. If you don't manage risk, risk will take you down. Change. You need to manage your changes, right? If I said I wanted to build a house that had 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, we're halfway through building it, and my wife comes over and goes, no, I want 3 bathrooms, not 2. Well, now we've got to figure out where to put it, right? And we have to make a change. And so can you make changes in a project? Yes, but you have to have a process for that. How are you going to do that? And so you have to figure out, okay, if we're going to make this change, I would go back to the builder and say, I want a 3rd bedroom, a 3rd bathroom. And he's going to go, great, I've already framed the house. Where are you going to put it? You're going to have to give up this master bedroom closet to put the bathroom there, or this part of the I don't know, the office or something. And they would have to reframe it, and that's going to cost you an extra $10,000. Are you willing to make that change? Are you willing to pay for that? And so these are the things you have to deal with in a project. And then progress, making sure that you're making your milestones and making sure you're having forward momentum. Progress has a lot of checkpoints along the way to make sure things are being done the way they need to be done. Okay. And then we got to talk about the processes, which were the center block here in dark purple. So in Prince2, we have processes as well. And this is what makes everything run. So we have starting up a project, we have initiating a project, directing a project, managing a stage boundary, controlling a stage, and managing product delivery. And then at the end, we close the project. And on a chart, it looks something like this. So at the beginning, we have an idea for something we want to build. Let's say Jason wants to make a new app to deliver Prince2 practice exam questions, and I want to make it an iPhone app, right? For example, that is my project mandate. I give that to my team. That's up here at the provide the project mandate. They then go into the starting up a project phase. Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time and money on it at first, but in the starting up a project, we are going to flesh out Jason's idea. And he's going to go, okay, well, we want it as an iPhone app. That means we have to become an Apple developer. We have to be able to program in Swift. We need these skill sets. We need this amount of time, this amount of money. And we start building out what that business case is going to look like. Then we bring it back up to the corporate management, which is this layer up here at the top. So it's your corporate management, your project management, or your customer if you're building something for somebody outside your organization. And they're going to say, yes, we agree, or no, we don't. And if they do, that pushes us down here into initiating a project. That's our first stage. During initiating a project, we get the team together, we hire the right people, we give them all the requirements, we gather all the things we need, and we start doing this stuff. And then as they do it, it goes up to the directing a project here, which is going to see, which is going to make sure that we are doing what we need to do and make sure that we're getting along the way and we're overseeing it. Down here at the managing level, this is where your project manager spends most of their time, right? They are the ones doing the initiating a project and overseeing that. They are also managing the stage boundary and checking the day-to-day progress. Once we go to directing a project, that's where we ask the executives, hey, I've gotten to the end of my stage. We were supposed to get the foundation of the house built. It's built. Look, here it is. We were on time. We were on budget. May I move to the next phase, which is putting up the walls of the house? And they will say yes or no. And if they say yes, you move into the next stage, which is controlling a stage. And your project manager is doing that. He's making sure the plumbers are there, the drywall's there, getting all the pieces together that need to be done. And those guys are all down, those folks, those teams, the plumbers, the electricians and all that, they're managing the product delivery. They're the ones actually delivering the product, and they have a team manager overseeing that, and the project manager is overseeing many different teams to have that happen. And then we get to a boundary, and we again get ready for the boundary, collect all the data, go up to the directing a project, ask for permission to go to the next level, and then we go to the level. And we keep doing that until we get to the end. At the final one, we say, can I close the project? Because you can't just walk away. And in closing a project, we gather the lessons learned, we get all the documentation, what went well, what didn't go well, close out everything, and deliver the end product. So that's kind of the Prince2 in a nutshell of the 777. So with that said, I am going to pause for a second here and give it back to Aaron. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the career path for Prince2. And we're going to mention Agile, as Aaron brought up earlier, and how Prince2 and Agile work together and how that looks. So first, let me bring you back over to Aaron. And we are going to talk about salary for Prince2 because everyone likes money.
Yep, this is true. All of our times are being rented, essentially. Somebody's renting our time, and it's for how much. So really quick on this, just to kind of point out, the median salary you're looking at for a role with Prince2 is $102,000. So 4 roles being called for in the US right now, that's the median salary. And if you actually come over and take a look at the experience level here, I think that, the story gets even better. As you've been, in a role for, a longer period of time, you really start to get up into those 6-figure salaries on the right-hand side. And then lastly, I put this one in here because I absolutely recognize, how well known PMI is. And to Jason's point, Prince2 and, PMP are not in competition with one another. They're kind of 2 different ways of, delivering a project. But some of, some really large organizations are using Prince2 and are hiring for Prince2. You've got the Bank of New York there, you've got Amazon and Ernst & Young. These are just the top employers, and you can see the percentage rate at which they've increased their hiring over the last 12 months.
So just on that point real quick, if you look at this, look at the companies that are in there as top employers. The reason that they're using Prince2 is because they're worldwide organizations, right? I can tell you, Ernst & Young, I have a lot of contracts with them. I do a lot of training for them. And because they have such a high presence in Europe, they were a Prince2 organization. And so when they came to the US, they brought Prince2 with them, right? The Bank of New York Mellon, they have a lot of international customers. So that's one of the reasons why they use Prince2. So it's not just that, Prince2 is a European thing only, but, in the US, it is over here as well. It's just not in the number as PMP, but I'm going to talk about why it's actually a good thing for us. One of the other things I want to point out here on the top slide is look at that top one, 0 to 2 years, 75,000, 76,000 for somebody with 0 to 2 years experience. That's a pretty good entry level wage, right? So that's not a bad place to start out. All right, sorry, I'll go to the next slide for Erin.
No. Yeah. Only if coming out of college, only if I had made 75,000. I came out of the session of 2008, and I'm pretty sure I was answering phones for a realtor for the first 2 years. And I had this 4-year degree that I thought was really sending me someplace. Anyway, all right. Another thing to point out here. So if you take a look, so we can actually, compare and contrast certifications. So the median salary over the last 12 months, for Prince2, as you saw earlier, is $102,000. And then for PMP, which is still a really respectable, number, but it's $96,000. And I think the one thing that I would share with you all on this slide is the fact that with a Prince2 certification, you actually don't have the prerequisites. We don't have kind of prerequisites that are associated with the Prince2 certification. I kind of look at Prince2 like a recipe. If the idea is that we believe that if you're able to, complete the exam, you're able to apply the knowledge, then you're able to apply that recipe to your day-to-day work, and you can use the book or Jason's training as kind of a reference point for that. So it's really a great place to start in project management if you've never done it before, because you don't have to have a set amount of prerequisites associated with them to still get a great median salary. Yeah. And then next, so we looked at this one earlier. So in the interest of time, we don't have to stay long on this one. But again, it's just to look at this through another lens and recognize that this commonality between IT and project management is something that we're seeing much, much more of. An IT project manager role is very valuable, whether or not you're in the IT industry or whether or not you're in marketing or other areas where they're calling for a project management certification. So really a great role and career path to consider. And then lastly, I like this slide. So this is where I pulled some data on taking a look at roles that were related to IT project manager roles. So essentially what this means is that 4 roles being posted in the United States and the skills associated with them, the certifications associated with them, the experience, the various areas of expertise. What this shows you, and it's kind of hard for you to see, but if you look closely, on the right-hand side there, you've got the IT project manager in the middle. And if you're someone who is an IT project manager, or you're somebody who's any of these roles outside of an IT project manager, actually the skills that you have are lining up very closely to what an IT project manager actually does as far as the expectations of employers on what those jobs ought to be. And what you can't see, but I will call out for you, is those 2 dots that are really close to the IT project manager role, which means that they're the most synergistic with those role types, is actually Chief Information Officer and Database Architect. So, an IT project manager's roles and functions are actually most aligned to a CIO, which I find very fascinating. And I just kind of wanted to point that out as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And I just want to go back for 1 second here before I go into the career path and point out. So we talked a little bit about Prince2 versus PMP. If you could wager a guess, maybe you can throw us in the chat. Why do you think PMP is a little bit less than Prince2 here in the US as far as salary?
I'd love to hear this because I
have a guess. I don't have an answer, but I have a guess. Anybody have a guess besides me? No? All right. So my guess is supply and demand, right? In the US, most people have PMP, right? And so when there's a lot more people who have a cert, the value of that cert goes down. The same thing happens on the cybersecurity side. I'm sure you guys have other speakers come in and talk about cybersecurity. One of the paths that I teach is the cybersecurity path. And everybody gets their security plus and they go, how come nobody will hire me? I have a security plus, right? Well, for every one job that needs a Security Plus, there are 5.5 qualified Security Plus candidates. So they don't have to pay you a lot because there's 5 other people who need it. Conversely, if you look at CISSP, there is 0.78 people who have CISSP for every one job. So they have to pay you more to get you to take their job instead of somebody else's. Same thing here. If an organization like EY, Ernst & Young, wants people who have PMP so they could talk with the European branches and understand and speak the same language in project management, they're going to pay for somebody who has Prince2. And if you have PMP and you don't have Prince2, they are not looking for you. And because there's less people in the US who have Prince2, those jobs do command a little bit higher salary when that happens. So just keep that in mind. All right, so what does Prince2 look like? Much, much simpler path than the ITIL. There's only 4 different exams for Prince2. And if you want to be senior qualified in Prince2, there's really only 3 you need to do. So you'll see my blue arrows here going all over the place. It looks like we're invading Russia or something. But what I usually recommend to folks is start out with Prince2 Foundation. In fact, you have to start out with either the Prince2 Foundation or the Prince2 Agile Foundation. Now, if you get the Prince2, oh, I probably should mention this. So there's 2 different books for Prince2. There is the Managing Successful Projects with Prince2, and there's Prince2 Agile. And I have them behind me, too far for me to grab. So each of those books is for each of their own exams. So one of the books is for this path, which is considered more the traditional waterfall path, like PMP. On the right side, we have the Agile path, which focuses much more on Scrum, Kanban, Lean, and all of those methodologies. We didn't get, because of the time period, I didn't have enough time to go into that today, but that is another option as well. And that's why when Aaron asked, Agile does work with Prince2. In fact, when you take the Prince2 Agile, you're actually getting a quick dive into regular Prince2, and then you add the Agile stuff into it as it integrates through. So what I always recommend to students is start out with Prince2 Foundation, because if you get your Prince2 Foundation, you can go from there either into Agile Practitioner over on the right side or the regular Prince2 Practitioner. And if you get these 3, you have every Prince2 certification any employer is going to ask you for. If you get the Agile Foundation, you can only do the Agile Practitioner. You can't switch over to the Prince2 Practitioner. So for that reason, I always recommend, if you're not sure which one to go with Prince2 Foundation first. And then even if you want to go over to Agile and not do the regular Prince2 Practitioner, you can, but you have a solid foundation to move over. So that's my recommendation. Now, PMP has realized that Agile is important, right? If you look at the new exam that's coming out, it was supposed to come out a year ago, then they delayed it 6 months, they delayed it 6 more months, and now I think it's coming out in June because of COVID, they kept delaying it. The new exam is now not just the PIM book, but it's also the Agile Practice Guide. They're adding that on, and what they've done is they've kind of bolted Agile on in the back. I also teach a PMP course just to be flat out and honest, but personally I like the way Prince2 does it better, which is why I'm here talking to you guys today. Prince2 is definitely my preference. I find that it is for students a lot easier to grasp, and as Aaron alluded to, the requirements to take Prince2 is different. So if you take PMP, to take PMP, you have to have 4,000 hours of experience. 4,000 hours of experience as a project manager before you could take PMP. So you have to get your CAPM, you have to do a classroom, and then you have to get the 4,000 hours. 4,000 hours is 2 years of full-time experience. So you need to go work as an assistant project manager for 2 years, then you can go take the course and the exam for PMP and then become a full project manager. Prince2 has no such requirement. For Prince2, if you want to take the practitioner level, this is the one that Prince2 practitioner is the equivalent of PMP, you can take the foundation level and then you can go take the practitioner. As long as you can pass the course, you are a certified person. And that's what employers see. So that is the difference, one of the big differences between PMP and Prince2. So when I have somebody who's brand new and says, I want to get into IT project management, what should I do? My first answer to them is go get your Prince2 foundation and go get a job go get a job using that as a project assistant or a project manager. And that way you can build the experience hours, and you can also get your Prince2 practitioner along the way, and then go get your PMP once you have those 2 years of experience. There's nothing wrong with having both because it opens up your options to any employer, regardless of what methodology they're using. And like I said, they're not against each other. They do work together. So that's one of the things I always recommend to folks as well, if you want to go down this project management path. So with that said, I think we've got like 15 minutes left in our session. So I'm going to open up to any questions you have on ITIL, PRINCE2, or any career questions, or even cybersecurity questions. I'm an expert in all things. No, I can answer any of those. And if I can't, maybe Aaron, Dennis, or Mike can help me out. But I'm pretty sure I can feel what you have.
Hey, Jason, I'll also say that Nicole asked a question on the Q&A section. So she had asked about talking about the little experience working with people in Italy and,
awesome.
and using ITIL.
Cool. Okay. So yeah. So can I talk a little bit about the experience of working with people from Italy to get their ITIL? Yeah. So I'm not working with them to help them get their ITIL. I'm not helping them on their certification side. What I'm helping them with is fixing their organization. So I am here working with a governmental organization, and I'm here for a year as part of this project. And I'm going through and helping them redo their processes in the newer ITIL 4 format to help get them efficiencies, because the current way they're doing things is slow, outdated, and takes forever. For instance, if we have one of their consumers that calls up their service desk and says, hey, I need, I don't know, Microsoft Word 2020, right? On my 2020 version of Microsoft Word, it can take them 3 months to get that, right? And that should be like a 24-hour thing because they own the licenses, they have it, but just getting it through the approval processes, the request for change process, it's what they are struggling with, the way that ITIL used to be viewed, which was it's this slow behemoth of a thing, and everything is a process, and it takes too long to get anything done. So I'm helping them work through that, which is challenging because they are a very large organization with a lot of different people doing a lot of different things. I'm here at their headquarters in Italy, but they actually have places in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 countries across Europe. Normally, I should be flying to each place and helping them with each of them, but because of COVID, I can't do that because every time you fly someplace, you got to wait for 2 weeks before you can get in the building. So it's been lots of fun. So we've been doing a lot of remote work, a lot of Microsoft Teams, and trying to help people through that. So yeah, it's very interesting. So most of their people are ITIL certified, but they're certified on the older method of ITIL. And so I'm trying to bring them up to the newer way, and they haven't really updated their processes in about 10 years. So it's just, it's not a very efficient way of doing things, unfortunately, because they're using older systems. And they have a very old aging network, and they haven't had money to replace it. They're on the list to get replacements, but getting the money falling down in government takes forever. If you've ever worked in government, you'll know government is slow.
Hey guys, I just want to let you know, if anyone wants to just ask their question verbally, just raise your hand and I'll let you talk. I'll unmute your mic.
That works. All right, I'll just keep talking if nobody has questions. So I can talk all night. I'm one of those people.
Jason, what time is it where you are?
According to my smart device over here, it is 1:20 in the morning.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah. Normally, I'm based out of Puerto Rico, where it's nice and warm and sunny, but today I am still here in Italy, and it is like 30 degrees Celsius, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's cold. Gotcha. Not pleasant. But yeah, so so I'll talk a little bit about career stuff, unless somebody else has another question. But one of the things that is usually the biggest challenge for people getting into technology in general is getting their first job. And I don't know of our attendees, where you are in your career path. If you're trying to get your first job in IT, or you're already in IT, or you're trying to move up or to a different company. But one of the things that you'll find is that recruiters and HR is really looking for 3 things, right? They're looking for experience first and foremost. They always want somebody with experience. And if they can't get that, then they look to the other 2 more heavily. But experience is going to trump everything else. How do you get experience? Time in the job, right? You can't get 20 years experience without spending 20 years. So then you got to look at the other things that you can control. Certifications is the second one. Most companies are looking for people with certifications. Second, because it shows that you have currency, because certifications update all the time. And so when you take something like ITIL, for instance, it was done in 2018. It's only 2 years old, and ITIL usually is on a 7 to 10 year cycle. So when you get that certification, it is good until, actually ITIL is good for life, but your version of ITIL is good for life. There's no renewal requirement, But when the new version comes out one day, which, they're not planning on a new one, but there might be
Not for a while.
Yeah.
We hope to keep this as it is for a while.
2025, 2030, something like that. At some point, something will change and they'll have another one, right? So, so that is something you'd be looking at. And then you might want to switch to the newer model. Same thing with Prince. Generally, it's because they're best practice frameworks. It's not like best practices change overnight. Generally, it's like 10 years between cycles when they have to update something. So both of them are very, very current and will stay with you. But employers do like certifications for that reason. It's a nice, easy way for HR to filter your resume, because with today's digital environment, when they put up a job posting, they get 100, 200, 300 people applying, because it's as easy as click a button. And so one of the things that happens is it goes through an application tracking system, ATS, and the first thing they start doing is scanning for keywords. Like if the job said you need to be Prince2 certified, they're looking, do you have Prince2, Foundation, Practitioner, Agile or not? And they're filtering people out based on that. So certifications are a way to get your resume highlighted to get you into the interview process. And then the third thing they're looking for is degree. And in my experience, the degree is more of the flexible requirement. The degree is usually, they're not as worried about what the degree is in. They're more worried that you have a degree. But again, I'm talking, I spent a lot of my career in government and government contracting and working with those folks. And for them, the degree, knowing that it's in project management or human resources or English doesn't matter. It's just that you have a bachelor's degree, because then they can put you at this pay grade instead of that pay grade, right? And they can charge more, if you're a contractor, charge more to the government client based on you having a degree. So that's usually the way to look at it, is experience, certifications, and then degrees are kind of a far last. Talk about the different systems. So ServiceNow versus Remedy, and explain the nature. Yeah, so ServiceNow and Remedy. So if you've ever worked at a help desk, you've probably used one of these systems. The organization I'm working with right now, they're using Remedy, and they're using a very old version of Remedy, which I'm not very fond of. I really do like ServiceNow. ServiceNow is a really good product, and there are certifications specifically in ServiceNow. And so one of the questions I get a lot from my ITIL students is, how come we don't cover something like ServiceNow or Remedy in the course? When you look at ITIL, again, we're a best practice framework. We're teaching you how to do something that will work regardless of the tool that you want to use, okay? So it doesn't matter what tool you're using, we're gonna teach you how to use it. Then you can pick the tool that you want, and all of those tools, when you look at ServiceNow and Remedy, they are built around ITIL, because ITIL is the world leader in service management. The next closest framework behind ITIL is COBIT, COBIT 5, and it is like 3 times less popular than ITIL. It's not even like PMP and Prince2 are here. It's like ITIL, and then COBIT's down here, and then there's some other ones like TOGAF and other ones that are down here as well, as far as market share. So ITIL really does help understand how to use those tools, but it doesn't cover the actual button clicking of it. Whereas if you take a ServiceNow certification, they're going to teach you how to use the tool, how to fill out a ticket. Those tools, they're used as an enterprise system to help you understand where you are in your organization. So that's things like your trouble tickets, your service requests. It's things like change management, and some of your project management stuff will go in there as well. And you can manage all of that from that centralized database, because we want to collaborate and promote visibility. By having it all in that centralized system that any agent can have, it has it there. So when you start seeing something like a service ticket, you call up and say, my computer's not working. The agent on the phone takes your request and puts it into ServiceNow. Then if they can't solve your problem, the clock starts going and starts seeing how long it takes that ticket to be solved. And as it goes through its life cycle, moving from the help desk to the field service technician who goes out to your office to replace your hard drive, or it goes back to the networking guys who have to fix something on the switch, or it goes to the server guys who fix something on your account profile. That ticket follows along, and all of those comments stay with it. In my organization, we use something called Freshdesk for ours instead of Snow or Remedy, because again, we're a small company and the majority of our service management is helping students, but we still track all of those emails that come in as tickets, because it allows us to make sure that regardless of who is answering your question, when my first level folks get the question, they can answer it. And if they can't, it goes up to our second level team. And if they can't answer it, it goes up to the third level team. And we've kind of broken ourselves up that way. All of my folks on my team are ITIL certified, so they can answer your ITIL questions. But if you have a really in-depth question, they'll usually push it to me, and then I'll answer that for you. So,
Jason, one thing. Here's a question for you. Do you think that if you had just switched tools with the Italian, with the company you're working with in Italy, for example, and didn't actually way of thinking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can't just switch from Remedy to ServiceNow and you're gonna, then all of a sudden things are gonna work. And I think sometimes, it's unfortunate because I hear so often about how, somebody has really invested a lot of money in a good quality tool, but if you haven't actually gone in and done some of the, some of those, actually internal process changes and cultural changes, then, it's a wonder why they don't work.
Yeah, so that, the tool is the information technology part, right? But the other things all affect that. And so if you don't get the rest of the processes right, the tool won't save you. Regardless of whether I give you Excel or Google Sheets, you can do a spreadsheet if you know how to do spreadsheets. The tool doesn't matter. Any tool can do what you need as long as you understand the processes. And that's why ITIL really focuses on the way things flow, the way the processes are, the organizational things, the things that impact the organization from the outside or from the inside. And by doing that and looking at this holistic picture, you're gonna have a much better service experience for your customers. Okay, I'm gonna open up for, if we have any more questions. I think we got 3 minutes. So if anybody else has a question, ask now or forever hold your peace. Let's see. Vivian, thank you for pointing out. Yeah, there are lots of different tools out there. ServiceNow, Remedy are two of the big ones. BMC is another one, although I think they got merged into Remedy a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. Just remember that it is all really focused not on the tool, but on the processes and the people and the technology. Consider all three of those, and you'll have a much more functioning organization.
Yeah, I would say that one of the things, as Aaron mentioned, that you really hear is this confusion between the tool and the process. And so I think there's an important education to be had about being able to define to an organization that these are two different things, and what their roles are. You look at some different frameworks that we've talked about today, or even other ones like DevOps or something like this. There's always this confusion around what are these things, and they're both are important, and they're both necessary, and they're both required to make the process work.
So I want to thank everybody for coming today and having us over here. I always love talking about this stuff. And as Dennis said, we have partnered up with BIT. We've given you guys a special offer. Dennis will send out the links for those of you who are interested, where you can take any of these ITIL or PRINCE2 courses, and you'll have me as your instructor, and we'll go through it and teach you and help you get certified. As far as just a level of effort for you guys to understand, ITIL generally takes people about a week to pass, using nights and weekends. If you're doing it full time, like you actually go to an in-person course, it's a 2-day course. But most of my students do it in about 7 days. So it's not like it's a huge commitment to get these certifications. PRINCE2, most of my students do it between 5 and 7 days. It's not a huge lift to do. It's fairly easy the way that we have it. We've broken it down really well to help you get certified. And we've, for those of you who are in the BIT Foundation, we have a special offer through Dennis and through you guys, and we'd love to have you in the courses and help you get certified too, and help you get to the next step in your careers.
Thanks, Jason, and thanks, Aaron and Mike. Yes, if you are a member, in the member section of the website, you can see the different courses that are offered as Jason's promo. But I will also send a follow-up to all of the attendees, so you'll get an email with additional details. And we hope to see you at a future Blacks in Technology event. Yeah, if you guys ever want to come back and do another, presentation, by all means, you're always welcome. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a great night, morning, or day, depending on where you are.
Have a good one.